You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. Okay, all of the free agents in my environment and the variables have all aligned so I could sit down and do this and record some stuff so that you all can listen to it and give me your feedback. And I would have you know that it is, I don't know, somewhere around 40 degrees outside. That's Celsius for those of you who don't live in these parts of the world. And I have closed the windows, and I have turned off the air conditioning, and I have turned off the fans, and I have turned off the computers. I've turned off anything that could make air or could produce any background noise so that you don't get distracted. So that just goes to tell you how much I wanted to do this and how much I'm sweating as I talk. So there you go. Little bit of information for you. It's happening right now, literally sweating. So I wanted to talk a bit about something that has come up in my studies in psychology and ultimately in accompaniment. My observations accompanying other people through their lives over the past, I'm 45, so over the past 45 years, but in somewhat of a more professional context, I'd say over the last 7-8 years. And that is that there is a foundation of accompaniment that tells us that as the person who is accompanying someone else, whether it be through an illness or whether it be through a rough moment in their life, we are not there to fix them because they are not broken. Psychologically speaking, no matter what happens, no one is broken. And so it is not the role of the person who is accompanying anyone else to fix them. And while I understand this through a spiritual lens, the concept that no one is broken, and what I mean by through a spiritual lens is that through a spiritual lens, we are the energy in these bodies. We are not the bodies. Seen through a Hindu spiritual lens, or rather an Eastern philosophy spiritual lens, we are not these bodies that we find ourselves in, and we are certainly not what happens to these bodies. We are the energy that animates these bodies, an energy that is loving, that is compassionate, that is wise, and that ultimately is unaffected by any of the sets of opposites that occur in our experience. And what that means is anything good or bad doesn't really affect the energy in the body. Hot or cold, light or dark, patient, impatient, these are all constructs of the human brain and the human experience. The energy in the body observes all of this occurring, but is not subject to it. And so the concept that no one is broken, seen spiritually, makes perfect sense to me. The real life application of this little piece of wisdom, I kind of take issue with, because I can tell you for real that in my life, there have been moments where I have felt broken. There are moments in my life that have broken me, albeit temporarily. When I was 9 or 10 in 1984, and I've spoken about this before, but my first experience with death was when my babysitter, this girl who lived in the neighborhood, she and her sister used to babysit my brothers and I, and she died in a car accident. And it was my first experience with true trauma, and it was my first experience being at the mercy of what was coming up in my body as what I couldn't understand then as being a real biological response to loss and to grief. And it was devastating. And it lasted for what felt like way too long. And I remember, 8, 9, 10 months later, after she had passed, I was still gutted by it. And I remember looking around me at everyone else who knew her and who had been affected by it, and they seemed to have gotten over it, or at least they seemed to be okay, and I didn't feel okay. And I remember thinking there must be something wrong with me, that I just can't get past this. Now, keep in mind, I was 9 or 10, so obviously my experience of life was limited, and this was a first for me. But in my life, there have been moments like this incident back in 1984 when I was broken, properly broken. It happened again in 2001 when I lost a friend in 9/11. It came when my teacher, Joan Ravinsky, announced that she was passing away, or rather that she had been diagnosed with incurable cancer. And it has always been a very biological response for me. I suppose that is what people refer to as shock. But really, there have been moments, more than I'm telling you about, but there have been moments in my life that have properly broken me. And so when we're told that, in psychological terms, no one is broken, I have an issue with that. I don't think that anyone is broken permanently unless they give up the fight to live life in hope and in faith and in trust. However, I do know that there are moments of brokenness, that there are moments where no matter what we do, no matter what we say, no matter what reserves of strength or resilience or wisdom we try to draw on, there are moments where we all of a sudden we've got nothing. We've got nothing. We don't have anything to fight back with. We don't have anything to make sense of whatever's going on. And those moments have really defined me. Now, in my life, those moments that I didn't want to experience, but that I was sort of being held hostage by, what those moments did was they dropped fear into my equation. And what I mean by that is they basically communicated to me that there will be moments in my life that I am not going to want to deal with, that are going to be horrifically difficult to get through. And consequently, there will be fear in anticipating these moments. There will be fear when we think that events are leading towards one of these moments. And there will be a low-level awareness of fear that life is not always fantastic, and there will be moments where we just have to put the blinders on and get through it and try not to let it kill us. Many of you know me as someone who teaches yoga. Others have done workshops with me where we talk about breath work and breathing consciously. I have taught so many times that I can't even count in yoga, even in meditation sometimes, and in breathing workshops, that if we don't learn how to harness the breath will harness us. So, for lack of a better term, I don't like the term control because I don't believe we ever really have control over anything. But if we don't at least try to control the breath will control us. In moments of panic and in moments of fear, one of the first things that happens is that the breathing changes. It changes from somewhat of a steady, even maybe shallow rhythm, and it either gets very staccato, it either gets very short and quick and a little bit more aggressive, or we inhale and we don't exhale until whatever the supposed threat has passed. So I teach that if we don't have some sort of practice to control the breathing when it gets tweaked into reaction, it will control us. Because when the breathing goes into any of those scenarios, any of those variations off of simply being, steady and even and nourishing, what happens is the body starts to react. There is a physiological response. And so blood pressure will rise, tension will start to build, contractions in the body will start to happen. And when there are negative sensations in the body, they feed negative thoughts. The negative thought may simply be some sort of panic response or fear response, which will feed the negative sensation of the body. And all of a sudden, we're stuck in this loop, the fear loop, the mind-body fear loop. And so to break that loop, one of the options that we have is to do something with the breathing that brings it back to calm, or at least closer to it. Now, the same thing can be said with fear. Fear is either going to control us or we are going to learn how to control it. I had a coaching client who was here last week, and we were discussing this. And I think that the terminology that came out of my mouth was, you have a decision to make. We all have a decision to make. Whether we are going to let fear make us its bitch, or whether we are going to make fear our bitch. Now, obviously the languaging is a little bit, wanting. But I think that the core of the message is important. I think it's important that we understand what our relationship is to fear. How much does fear play a part in our lives? How is it integrated into our thought processes, potentially without us even being aware of it? Many people are motivated into the world by fear. They will make decisions based on what could go wrong, the fear of what could go wrong, as opposed to seeing what the best potential outcome could be and having faith that that could happen and basing decisions on that. I know that in the 10 years that I have been teaching and giving trips around the world, I have had countless people tell me that they want to, or that they meant to, join me on one of the trips, one of the yoga and meditation vacations or city breaks or retreats that I give around the world, but money is an issue, or their kids are going back to school when the event is occurring, or they're not going to be able to get the time off, et cetera, et cetera. You understand where I'm going with this. And in the moment, obviously, I meet that with kindness and with compassion and understanding, because I do understand. But what I also understand, and I have taught this in other classes, obviously not at the same moment, because that would be disingenuous of me and unkind. But what I have also taught is that if you believe that your children are going to be the obstacle to you doing what you want to do, then they will be. And if you believe that money is going to be an obstacle in your desire to do what you want to do, then it will be. And if you believe that you're not going to get the time off of work, then you won't. Not trying, and hear me when I say this, I'm not selling my trips. I'm not saying this because I want to sell my trips. My trips sell themselves. That will continue to happen. I'm not worried about it. But what I want to get across is that if we believe that something is going to be an obstacle, then we are giving it more power than probably it deserves. And sort of, law of attraction, law of manifestation, we are making it be the thing that we resent it to be. Or we're making it be the thing that we don't want it to be. We're giving it that power. And so ultimately, a lot of people won't even ask for the time off because they don't think they'll get it, as opposed to seeing what happens. A lot of people believe that they're never going to have enough money, so I'm not going to take care of myself with the money that I have. I'm going to be responsible and put it back into the infrastructure and make sure that I'm, doing, quote unquote, the right thing. Well, listen, I don't think that there is anything better that we can do with our money than take care of ourselves. And obviously, yes, some of that has to go back into infrastructure and paying taxes and rent and mortgages and clothing and food, obviously. But our well-being is part of that entire equation. The thing that we need to know about money is that it carries the energy that we give it. So if we are constantly thinking that we don't have enough of it, or we're not going to have enough of it, then we will be in a relationship of fear with it, and it will hold us hostage. If we think that our kids aren't going to be able to survive if we're not around, then they won't. We will set things up so that they won't. And so I'm just giving examples of how fear potentially can integrate into our thought and decision-making processes without us even knowing it, without us being any the wiser. Now, the other option we have is to make our decisions based out of hope and faith, to work against the brain's natural tendency to focus on what is wrong and redirect it to what potentially could go incredibly right, or what is already going right, what is already good, what is already going well. Consider that in this moment in time, when news and media agencies are reporting only the horrific, this is work. This is, I believe, our life's work. Our life's work to rise above the chaos and to still seek out the good and to still contribute to it. When the natural, easy thing to do would be to just, contribute to the chaos. It's effortless. It's so easy to complain. It's so easy to bitch. It's so easy to pick on something that everyone else thinks is going wrong and believe it. I think that the meaning of life, if there is one, is to rise above all the chaos and still be connected to light and be connected to good. And in my experience, my relationship to fear has changed so much since those moments that have broken me. Again, coming back to the Hindu lens of spirituality, the energy in the body is made up of something called discriminative wisdom. And this means that no matter what that energy encounters, it can handle. We are asked to identify ourselves as that energy, not the body that it animates, but the energy. And so if we do that, then all of a sudden, we are an energy that can handle whatever it encounters. This means that there is very little room for fear in our equation. I have gotten to a point in my life where fear plays a very, very, very small part. Doesn't mean it doesn't come up, and it doesn't mean that I'm in any way doing anything better or differently than anybody else. But I have been working on this for a long time because as a child, I was a fearful kid. And I got so sick of it that I thought, you know what? Whatever the other option is, I'll do that. And it led me, albeit unknowingly at the time, to Eastern studies, to yoga, to meditation, to Hinduism, and to psychology as well. An exercise that I have done in the past and that I try to do as often as I can and that I would like to offer to you, the listeners, is to start being more aware of moments where you're making decisions and asking yourself, am I making this decision out of fear or am I making this decision out of hope and faith? If you are finding that you are making decisions based out of fear, I want you to jump beyond yourself. I want you to get out of your own way. Do what ordinarily you would not do and make the decision based out of faith and hope. If that means that you take a different route home than you ordinarily would have because that road is always blocked, but it could be faster if it's not, try it. If it means that you're going to spend a little bit of extra money on something because it's going to bring you a little bit more happiness or it's going to help you take care of yourself a little bit better, do it. If there is a conversation that needs to be had but you have been holding back from having because you have been afraid that it was going to go horribly, have it. Instigate it. Keep it going. Get it done. We are not meant to be living our lives in a constant state of fear. We are meant to be living our lives with like a capital L, living. We are meant to be touching moments of truth and beauty and connection and love and kindness, all of it. We're meant to be living at a level that no one is encouraging us to live. That only comes, as far as I'm concerned, when we let go of the hold and the grip that fear has on us. It only occurs when we understand what that relationship is that we've been having with fear. It occurs when we call things for what they are. It occurs when we get out of our own way. It occurs when we jump beyond ourselves. When we do what previously we would never have done, for whatever reason. So this is your mission, if you choose to accept it. Let's say for the next 24 hours, okay, I'm not asking for much. For the next 24 hours, I want you to go out into your life. You're not going to be doing anything differently except being present enough cognitively. So aware of every single moment where you're making a decision. And listen, there may be a lot of them. And ask yourself, is this decision being made out of fear or out of faith and hope? If it is being made out of fear, forget about the negotiator in every one of our minds that would justify why we are choosing the fear option. I want you to ignore that negotiator, unless it's a case of, I'm thinking about jumping off a bridge. Oh, maybe it'll be a good idea. Obviously, it's not going to be, okay? Like, it's a no-brainer. But unless it's that black or white, I want you to not even pay attention to the negotiator. Stop paying attention to that inner voice that is telling you why you shouldn't, why you don't even deserve to, and go the route of hope and faith. Test it. This is a social experiment, 24 hours. Let me know how it goes. All I can tell you is that in my life, this has made a massive difference. In my life, my experience has become one of buoyancy and amazingness and connection and comfort and ease and freedom. Because that's what this is about. Fear keeps us from living our life in freedom. Once we have learned to be in a healthy relationship with fear, we are more free. We are not held hostage anymore. And ultimately, if that's not the best goal that we can be aiming for, then I don't even know why I'm bothering with this. Listen, try it, see how it goes, let me know. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.